Welcome to the meeting of the Assets and Infrastructure, and I think we have a full house with the, Amber has sent her apologies. Otherwise, moved by Councillor Stoltz, second by Councillor Burdett. All in favour? Against? Carried. Right. Declarations of interests. I'll give you plenty of time to think about it. No? Okay. Confirmation non-confidential minutes. If someone would like to move that to an accurate record, moved by Councillor Burdett, second by Councillor McLean. All in favour? Against? Carried. Any comment or matters arising? And also we'll use the action sheet and the long-term plan to plan, work plan. Nothing there? All good. Oh, we'll move on. Leave of absence. Anyone deciding to have a leave of absence? Acknowledgements and tributes. Public input and petitions. There's been nothing that I know of. No. Extraordinary business. Right. Notices of motion. No. Adjourned business. No, we're all good there. Okay, so we'll move on to the reports, and the first one is on page 11. And I'll get it right this time for my meeting. Right. So we're going to have someone speak to this, or is there? It's not. It's only for noting. Has anyone got any comments or issues or? Moved by Councillor Burdett. I'll second by Councillor Wilson.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, you can.
Actually, with the proposed new idea of raising the waste levy dramatically, is the idea with the money collected along the same lines, or hasn't that been thought about yet?
Through the Chair, our understanding is MFA will look to raise the levy, and they will be also re-investigating around how those levy funds are then apportioned to councils and then through their own waste minimisation fund as well. Given they're still reviewing the levy, we'll have to wait to see what the outcome of that work is.
Okay. Councillor Stoltz.
I have one question, and I'm sure you will have a quick and easy answer. So Gizzy Kai asked for $8,700, but we had $10,000. So why did we not give them the $8,700 and then give someone else who also applied the $1,300? Is there an easy answer?
Unfortunately, I do not have an easy answer to that question, Councillor Stoltz.
I was just interested to see that, you know, they asked for 8,700, but then we give them 10,000 if there were other applicants as well. So I was just wondering the justification around that.
Okay, in the report, they gave the extra for travel and some other.
No, I see that.
Yeah.
No, I saw that.
Yes.
What I'm asking is, if someone asks you for $8,700 and you've got $10,000, but you also have other applicants, I saw that. I was just wondering what the justification would be on giving someone extra money and not giving that to one of the other applicants. That's what.
Stoltz household doesn't
do that. No, we will give it to someone else.
Okay, can I say that Andrew White is the man who's managed all this, and maybe we should get that question to him at some stage for an answer. Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, not inconsistent with that question, but I see we're now in the 18-19 year going to have 257,000 to give away, and obviously the decisions are made in. What is it? It says it's carried over for the year. So you're telling me the 257 is not our money? It reads like it could be our money, in which case all I'm really wanting to say is, can we please know who are the rest of the recipients? Because this paper only talks about one recipient. So when you make allocation in the 18-19 year, which may not be immediately, can we hear who the rest of the applicants are? I mean recipients, not all.
So through the Chair, the total amount that Councillor Seymour is referring to, 257 is our combined income that we get per year. That isn't just for the fund. So our waste fund is a part of that component that we spend.
Exactly.
The amount has stayed the same. The rest of it gets spent on waste minimisation initiatives. That also funds a role within council staff and pays for things, some of the funding for the environment centre to run our waste minimisation programs from there and things like that.
Which, and 257,000 is quite a large sum of money. So can we have a report back sometime on how that's spent? That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, just for the chair too, just around that, the unsuccessful applicants, they get another chance to kind of apply again the following year, and their programs, you know, they obviously don't quite fit with the fund, I guess, as the Gizzy Kai Rescue has, but are they encouraged to kind of keep their program going and reapply?
Through the chair, in past years, I know that the Waste Minimisation Officer, so Anne, would always make contact with the unsuccessful applicants, talk to them why they were unsuccessful and talk about changes that could be made to their application to make it more suitable for funds, to make sure it hits criteria better, or look at other funding sources where Julie Condell would sometimes give advice around more appropriate funding avenues if they weren't able to get it through our Waste Minimisation Fund.
I'll move receipt of the report. Oh, you have? Okay.
Okay. Any other comment? All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Page 15.
There's a supplementary paper.
Good afternoon. So I've assumed again that you've read the report, so if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. No, it's all in the report and I can answer if you have questions.
Okay, so any comments, questions that you'd like to raise? Right.
I'll move receipt of the report. Second.
Moved by councillor Wilson, second by councillor Burdett, and if there's no other comment, I'll put it all in favour. Against? Carried.
Okay.
Thank you
Easy,
very
thank
much.
you.
Sorry, so troubled you.
Could I, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Page 76 will go to the school prioritisation. Right.
Kia ora, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
Would you like to speak to this or?
Oh, no.
I'm sure you I'm going to insist because we'll be gone in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
No, if you don't, if you don't, that's fine. So is any questions or answers or questions or comments? It's all pretty straightforward actually. And we've been through it a bit before and I'm pleased to see the Ngātepa School. So it's moved by councillor Stoltz, second by councillor McLean. And there'd be one question I might ask.
Oh, no.
We've got another big presentation coming.
Do you think? No. Some of the schools that we've been to have asked for just some signage, they've asked for signage or something and they get, over the years, I'm talking about a long time, and then when it appears here, it's a $90,000 electronic one, and I just wonder whether, do we overcommit sometimes? And I'm not against it, I think it's great, and I think that, but, some of them have no signage or even a couple of big signs that they were even talking about, who came up to Councillor McLean was at Ngātepa at the annual plan meeting where give us some paint and some boards and we'll make some signs sort of thing. So they weren't expecting a lot, but I'm sure they'll be happy with electronic. But do you think that we could cover a whole lot more if we just went for a more simple solution, cover a whole lot more ground with the budget?
I'm probably not the best person to ask in terms of that.
So through the chair, I'll answer that one. With every single school, we get it assessed by a safety engineer. They give us what the recommendation is to make that site safe for kids. So I know that some of the solutions like a bit of paint and a board to put it up, but that's not what makes it safe for the kids. So they go through, make sure that what's available, what's the best technology, what are the proven ways of slowing people down around schools, which is why they recommend the ones that they do.
Great answer. Thank you very much for councillors.
Chairman, is David suggesting an electronic sign makes it a lot safer?
It's more
Accept
visible.
what you say.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Good answer. I'm happy. Councillor Stolz and Councillor Seymour.
I have one question. If you take a look at page 77, so we've got 300K that we're allowed to spend in this year. And it talks about we're going to spend it on Gisborne, Girls Eye, Ngātapa and Mangapapa. But if you go to our prioritisation list, Kaiti School is number 3.
Yeah, that's right. We've had to bump up Ngātapa, as you probably know, in the past that had been approved, I think, 2 years ago. So that's why we've pushed Ngātapa out. But at the same time, there was no budget set aside for that project. So it's had to come from this, from the school's prioritisation budget.
So just a supplementary question then, we should then adjust our school priority list to reflect that. Because at this, our ranking here, we should then change
Yes,
it around in
yes.
order to reflect what we are really going to do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I was just wanting to ask, around the Mangapapa School, is that work happening in the side street where Mangapapa School is or in Ormond Road? Because that'd be useful information in the public domain.
Ormond Road.
Thank you.
I'll take a little bit of time through the chair. I see there Macquarie School's prioritised number 4 with a big spend there of 225,000. Is that involved in some quite major road construction?
Parking was the biggest issue there, congestion.
Parking?
Yeah.
Well, really, all they were asking for was calming signs. So, again, for probably a lot less, they want some speed zone signs. And I'm just wondering how that fits with this.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's all been assessed, and once we go through the first 3 schools, then we'll be able to progress. So that might be year 2, year 3.
Will it be a total of 4 years when you fight for that? Okay.
So supplementary to that, and I raised this issue when we discussed it previously, to what extent is it the responsibility of this council project to pay for parking? Now, definitely we want to make the road safer, and I absolutely get all of that. But the Ministry of Education is very adequately funded for schools across New Zealand, and we know even in this district, some are open with very small numbers of children in them, so they could do some rationalising with their own money. If 225,000 is substantially for parking, what kind of conversations have we had with the Ministry of Ed about that, please?
Through the chair, the schools have been talked to, the ones that we have upcoming around what it is the expense are going to be put there. The Ministry of Education doesn't have money to spend on some of these projects. We're not spending money, ratepayer money, to fund upgrades that the Ministry of Education should be doing. That's part of where they need to come to the party for that. Makoti School does require, for the outcome that that school and that community is wanting, that does require some big investment to make that school safe going forward. Part of that 225,000 is around road alignment, it's about parking, it's about a whole range of issues that we need to deal with for that school. So Ministry of Education absolutely through the boards of trustees at those schools and directly with MOE are being engaged to make sure that we're not paying for things that MOE should be paying.
Everybody happy with that? Yeah. And I have a member of the second one. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. We'll move on to our next page on the right.
I've just read this here, And it should have been highlighted when we actually came to the item, but it stimulated some questions for me for that item, which we've already passed on from. But I'm sure that won't be an issue, is it? Because it's not going to alter anything in the way of a recommendation. But am I able to ask some questions around that? Yeah, yeah. So, and really it's following on from this morning that I was wanted to investigate a little more, and that is how much more information needs to be gathered for these RAM records to get full information on all of our infrastructure assets. Where are we in the investigation?
It's a compromise about how much information you need and how much you have to give to prove our valuations. But for instance, if you take the extreme and take a street light, it has so many components in it, and so what we try and do is say, hey, the lamp, what the whole component is. But what has been happened in this is that we'll take a street light, for instance, is that some of the information hasn't been put into when it was actually installed, so it goes to a default factor. And so the goal is once we get, or I call it the smaller ones, we still actually have to make sure we concentrate on the big items which affect that, which is the pavements, the bridges, and those are the ones. And once you can get that information down, then basically you can start potentially pushing some of those assets out. But until you've got that information, the valuers won't push them out past these standard useful lives. And the reason they won't do that is because they think there's pressure for us to keep rates down, one of the things is to keep pushing your asset lives out. So it's just a balance between the independent auditors and what we have to do.
Can I just ask a little further to that? Are we experiencing that as we gather more information, we are extending the lives of these assets on our records and subsequently lowering our depreciation for those assets? Is that occurring now?
That's occurring now. But what will happen is, like, we'll take this emergency works event, and then there's going to be a lot more retaining walls that are going to get built, and so we have to make sure, or bring them. Are those like, depending on the size of the retaining wall, should you make that a consumable item? Are those, or should, depending on the size of it, then it has to go on the asset register? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That the railings would have a similar life to the duration of the bridge. Well, seriously, I can tell you that the Wigan Bridge ones lasted 6 weeks because people chose to go around the end of them. So I think that we should actually look at in real terms, actually what the railings on bridges do last, because if we honestly think they last the lifetime of the bridge, various bits and bobs of wear and tear, we're never going to be up to speed on being able to replace them at an appropriate time if we've factored in a budget that has them lasting the life of a bridge, which is 50 years or more. So I really do want to flag, but our people have gone, that issue around railings. So, I mean, from living in the country and knowing where railings disappear and need to be replaced, they do not last the life of a bridge.
That's true.
Thank you.
True.
So can we amend what we're saying in here about recommended improvements for action around railings, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the Lifelines Infrastructure Delivery Program. So Neville's come to us today. He's going to run through the workshop presentation with us.
Through the chair, if I can just introduce this paper, and it's due to something that Councillor Dowsing raised in Finance and Audit this morning, and it's around the changes that we've made to deliver the capital works program for Lifelines. And as I know councillors rightly raised this morning, it's significant expenditure in how we're actually going to do the volume of work that we have in front of us. What we've done is we've been more proactive this year around attracting contractors and making sure that they know what our schedule of works is that we have coming up. The presentation that Heather's passing around at the moment is to be given tonight to the contractors that we have in region and outside of the region as well. So what we've done is we've invited the contracting industry here this evening to sit down and talk about our capital works program that we have in front of us from both the long-term plan and the Provincial Growth Fund. And we'll go through the presentation in a minute, but you can see by the paper that you have in front of you, we have a huge capital works program in front of us. The Four Waters program is already tight. There's over 47 projects that we have in the capital works program just for the Four Waters space for this year that need to be delivered. And they do range in size. So there are small ones that are around $30,000 right up to multi-million dollar, rising main renewals that need to be done. Part of what we're trying to achieve, and for the contractors that we've spoken to already, they quite like the fact that they know where the jobs are and what's sitting there. So what we've done in both roading and in water is we've been proactive in putting together supply panels for small pieces of work that we have in front of us. So for that $30,000 type project, we have a supply panel now of suppliers that we can go to, that they can go and deliver that for us without having to go through a massive tender process, because we've already been through a tender process to be them to put on the supply panels for us. So we know the rates, we know who's doing the work, we know the scale of works. Roading's done this for footpath maintenance, for example. That's no longer being delivered by Downer. Downer were delivering that through subcontractors, so the likes of Ritchie's, Curry Construction, those guys were actually doing the physical works. What we've done is put up a supply panel of those smaller suppliers who are able to come in and do the work that we need to when we want it done, so we can get it done faster. The flip side of it that we're also talking to industry about is when they have downtime between contracts to come in and pick up those $30,000, $50,000 contracts, which is only 2-3 weeks work for them. But if they have a gap between big jobs, they're able to come in and pick them up and knock them off for us quite quickly in between when it suits when they have downtime. So by having supply panels in place, we've done a proper procurement process, and they've already been through a transparent way to be able to get that work done. So that means that we have less work that we have to do pushing paper around, and they have less time that they have to do when it comes to tendering as well. So it's all about improving the speed of what we're doing. The main objective of tonight and talking with the contractors that we have so far is actually around resourcing for them going forward. We've been very clear with all contractors that they've got a tender for this big stuff. There's no favours being done to anybody, and it's definitely not a lolly scramble. So it's getting things back in place around how we're going to be procuring, and that if they want to be part of it, these are the standards they need to be at, and also who wants to come out from underneath being a subcontractor and move to being a main contractor, but then who actually want to be aware of what's coming up through a Downer contract or a Fulton Hogan contract, that they want to make sure that they're talking with Downer and Fulton Hogan about coming on as subcontractors. And for some of the smaller guys, they've already said, we want to stay as subcontractors to Downer or Fulton Hogan, and there's a range of different business reasons for them to do that. And we're fine with it, but we want them to also know the volume of work coming up so we can start prioritising that as well. So that's the purpose of what we're trying to do. It's already working for us. We've already got works underway. We've already got contractors who are lined up to do work for us. And we already had conversations around what, where, when, and all of those things. So we're pretty confident that this is going to help us. It's something that within 2 years, we would see that this would be done yearly. So the presentation tonight, we would do each year with our contractors, and it get better each year as we're able to start our designs earlier each year as well. So as you know, we've already discussed, we've started designs early this year. So we already had some started last financial year. This year, we've got budget in to start designs early for next year as well, so that we're trying to keep ahead with the design, so that we've got the procurement process a lot faster for when we get into construction season. So, is there anything you want to add? Oh, damn. If you'd like, Chair, we can flick through the presentations. You can see it unless there's any questions from the councillors now.
Just one with regard to these flow programs you've got on here. Is there a way that we can, like I see that the first one, Herenni Street, obviously that's going to cross through from one financial year to the next. Down here, Tolaga Bay Septage, it's going to go from one financial year to the next.
No, it's not. Financial year's July to August.
Oh, is it? okay.
Yep.
Well, you can see some, the ones that cross
Some
over.
are multi-years.
Is there some way that we can have dollar signs, some numbers attached to the back and the front of that contract so that we know that you're on schedule at the crossover of the financial year?
So through the chair, there's integrated reporting coming to the November committee round. We will be able to roll out for the first time exactly as you're asking. That's where the breakdown of those projects, the spend to date, where they should be in their contract milestones will be part of that November reporting round. So that'll be at the next assets and infrastructure.
Thank you very much. And it's been a long sort of awaited thing that we've been requiring. So I just thought there was an opportunity to ask again there. Thank you.
Okay. So
Councillor Seymour.
Excuse me, if we believe that the construction of the project in Northern George Road, that's underway now.
Larry.
It's completed, right. So then the Douglas Street one, which was put off once before, it looks like being designed in September, so it must be designed now and awarded this month. Why is that construction pushed right through to March next year? Because that really was a project that was meant to have happened a year or so ago. We didn't have suitable tenders.
Yeah, if you're through the chair, if you recall last year, we had the tender was 60% above the engineer's estimate.
I understand why I put it up.
Yeah.
but From the time of awarding the tender, why is it 4 months before they need to start?
What we're trying to do is give flexibility. If you have a look at the whole work program, we're actually not, the discussion with the contractors tonight, and that's part of the report, is we're trying to give flexibility to the contractor rather than us say rigidly, we want it to start this date and finish on this date. What we're trying to now is provide flexibility for the contractor to say, well, I will finish the job and our job and we'll be free at this time. So rather than have this as rigid, this is an indication of what we're expecting with regards to the workload. We have actually encountered a small issue with Douglas Street, which we've now had the ultra-fast broadband installed in the location where we wanted the pipe to go. So we're currently...
Council and Flores were talking to one another.
Yes, we were, but there's an oversight. So they were made aware well a long time ago that it was going to be there. So we're just sorting that issue out at the moment.
through the chair, the other reason why we've pushed Douglas Street out is because it's a project that can run through winter, given that it's a nice sandy soil. It's not one that needs to be done by sort of March, April. It's one that can run through March, April, May because of the very low water table there. So it's one that we're trying to show the contractors, if you can do it in November, December, January, fantastic. But there are other projects through there that we would rather have done because they need the water table to be down.
Further questions?
Yeah, no, it's fine. You can ask a question, then we're just going to go through this. Once you see, yeah, that's fine.
This is what I'm talking about. I don't know how it's missed, but I brought to the attention we have people in terms of wastewater, that the holding tank in terms of the Ruatoria toilets is inadequate, and I understand now that it's leaking. It's not on the capital project or anything there. Plus, we go over, and Dave would be well aware of this through Tairāwhiti Roads. Walker's Road Bridge has been sitting there for 2 years awaiting repairs. The last time I spoke to Dave, which was a considerable time ago, they were talking 100,000 then. And it's not on the works program at this point in time. So
Would that not be,
well, I'm hoping it's in the 10-year plan.
no, but would that not be maintenance rather than capital works?
Through the chair, if I can just clarify, the ablution block at Ruatoria, that sits within livable communities, and it's one of their projects that they would be progressing. This is only for the sort of major, this is water that you can see in front of you here. The capital projects and the things for roading sits completely separately. We haven't tried to pull all of those out at this stage because there's so many and they'll be put through the maintenance contracts.
Right.
So this evening, part of this is the presentation that we'll give tonight, but I just wanted to give you a context for what it is and the breakdown that we're giving to contractors so that you can see what it is that we're sharing with them around trying to break it down and give it to them. So introductions, the context of what we're working in. So a number of the contractors are still to meet some of our team with the changes around that we've had. So getting through that and then just leaving time for them to ask us questions. They've been sent the presentation so that they can see what it is that's coming up and be able to start preparing for what those questions are. So talking context about the LTP and the priorities for the long-term plan that we've just set, which has led to the increased work program that we have in front of us. One of the things we really want to talk about tonight with our contractors is about the provincial growth funding and it not being the lolly scramble that everybody seems to think it is. So as you're aware, we're getting asked already for when we can start writing checks for work and things like that. So it's around just realising that there's a process that needs to be done with that procurement and that there's design. It's not just let's just have a free-for-all. So I think there may be some disappointed people after we do a couple of these slides tonight. Talking about the roading increase. So yes, we have got a very big increase in roading and talking about where it's focused. So you've seen all of these things before at the previous presentation. So I'll just quickly flick through these ones. As I said, probably the most important point I want everybody to get tonight is that it is about procurement and it's going to be transparent and direct appointment will only happen with a very strong business case for why there will be direct appointment. We'll talk about some of the projects potentially for direct appointment later on, but it's something to be used very sparingly and it's not the way forward at all. So Rakaitana you've seen as well. So 4 waters. So each of the slides, as you can see in front of us, has a description about what it actually is that we have coming up, the budget associated with those pieces of work, and sort of some of the things that the contractors will need to think about how they're going to deliver those projects. We've put up things that already have been allocated as well, because even though they're going to the likes of Fulton Hogan and the water space, Fulton Hogan under their contract that they have with us get a level of works as of right if they deliver to their performance standards. So the permanent flow loggers is one of those where they have that work as of right. Just because they have the work doesn't mean that they don't bring subcontractors straight in as well to deliver some of these things for them. So think the likes of Dig Eastland, Earthwork Solutions, those guys still very heavily subcontract back in under Fulton Hogan. And there are some jobs that they will always do that for, and there are others that they're looking to break out. So hence why we wanted to pull it all up on the table so they can start knowing the wider context of what's coming up. So each of the jobs has what it is, the budget, and all of those things running through it. So are there any of these you want to talk to as we go through them around?
I think the procurement process is by far focusing on the biggest dollar items. Because if we look at from securing resources, having the early discussions around the major items and then prioritising the rest from there. So that's kind of the backdrop of the discussion.
I think the cure in place is quite a good example of, so this is where we leave the pipe in the ground and we put the liner through the middle of it while it's still in the ground. It's a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot faster for us to be able to do this. And we've got 795,000 to put into this for wastewater pipes, and there's only ever been a couple of suppliers put in for this. Us talking about the volume that we have coming up and for how long we're wanting to be able to do this, and if you remember, this is only something we started doing a couple of years ago, and it's worked very well for us. It doesn't work for everywhere in the network, unfortunately. It has to be the right grade of, the right fall in the pipe, and it has to be the right type of works and all of those things for it. But it is helping us to be able to do more work at a time. And part of talking more about the fact that we're open to this and the volumes of work, contractors are actually looking to bring the equipment in themselves potentially to be able to deliver this locally too. So what we're trying to do is show them the hand before we play it so they can start getting things like cure in place could potentially be done by a local firm rather than having the out-of-town companies come, subject to price and all of those things as well. So there's things like rising mains that need to be done. I don't know how much detail you want on all of these. It's up to the committee. They're all here. So you've got a fair few, ain't you? So there's pump stations, there's rising mains, there's the septic site at Tolaga, for example, there's another septic site, removal at Tikataka. These are all projects that can move around within those timeframes. So part of talking to it, as we said earlier, is so that people can bring in suggestions of when times of year will work better and when time of year it won't work better. So back to Douglas Street, it was Fulton Hogan who suggested we could leave that one till later on because of the low water table and those sort of things through there.
In Tolaga Bay, is that the same one as we've always had off the road to the wharf?
Through the chair, we've had a review of all the separate sites. That's Tiki Tiki, Tukumara Bay, all those sites, and Tapuia, and some of them wouldn't get consented. So we're looking to close some of them and provide a much larger facility. So we've spoken with the carriers where the suitability of a site would be. And we're currently going through the site selection process.
Because that's exactly what I was thinking, remembering the resource consent process for the last time for Tolaga Bay. So. And can I just ask another question before we go through, back on the roading one? On the second page of roading works, well, first of all, on the first page, the last item, rock protection along Tukumara Bay seawall. Now, I understand that contract has been tendered. Has it been let yet, please?
We're in the tender evaluation process at the moment, and because we are looking at these other works that we're looking at.
But the people want that fixed. How long is it going to take out of the evaluation process, please?
It could take another 2 weeks, and the reason for that is we're looking at giving other work to the successful tender, and that will speed up procurement in other areas.
Can I ask Mr. Wilson, is there a time frame for that piece of work to be completed? Because that's not quite like the other items that could be done today or tomorrow. Those are quite significant incursions into the roadway, and the community of Tukumara Bay have been putting up with that and being told it was going to be fixed. So do we have a time frame around that contract?
Through the chair, as Mr. Hadfield's just said, we need to make sure when we procure, we get the best outcome for what we're spending. Adding it in for another 2 weeks while we get the procurement right for the other works will make a huge difference and save us money for that project and for other projects as we put it through. So we'll be looking to get that done by Christmas. So it's still on track for that, but we need to make sure that we have it in with other projects at the same time. We're going to have to re-tender all of those as well.
Thank you. Now, my second question is on the bottom, second to bottom bullet point, continued road widening of the Rototokahu curves. Could someone tell me where that is, please? I think it's a typo, and
I think it is a typo.
It is a typo, and I raised it a month ago. Do you think we could possibly correct it so we're actually talking about the right piece of road?
Yes.
The Rototahi curves, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
And could we please get it right? Quite important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
An important one that we're talking about tonight for the first time with our suppliers is the public drains on private property. So this is DrainWise, and part of why we're talking about this is the program where we have $540,000 per year to do the on-property fixes for DrainWise. If we were to put this out to market at the moment, it would be an extremely niggly tender because this is house by house, small jobs, large jobs. It's a real merry mess of how many different projects. You wouldn't bother trying to tender them all. However, if we also put them all to market, we'd probably flood the market at the same time because there won't be sufficient drain layers in town. Drain layers are already very busy in Gisborne, as are most tradies. So what we're looking to do here is talk with the market around the work that we have coming up and bundling packages of work rather than letting each one individually. So we would look to, say, put half a dozen properties together and put that out to a panel again to actually make sure that we can get efficiencies of scale and they can get an efficiency of scale as well so that we're buying in bulk to be able to put those out. The challenge with this one, of course, is it changes each package as to what type of work it's going to be. Some of it may be just a cracked lateral that needs replacing, others may need gully traps and a whole lot of range of other things, stormwater sumps put in out to roads. So we're just trying to work through the design, as you can see, to make sure we have that right, and then we'll be putting those packages of work out. The good thing about this is we've already talked to some of our contractors who have been deciding what to do in the drain laying space, and all have realised that with this work coming on, it actually can create an efficiency for a lot of people here. So one in particular has already started talking about bringing on more cadets to be able to, apprentices, sorry, to be able to help with the work that they've got going up. So it's an important one to make sure we get right, because otherwise we will have real challenge trying to spend that money year on year for those on-property fixes.
Did we come up with a solution for funding? These private work on public property?
No, we haven't done that.
So through the chair, this was the interim step that council agreed to through the long-term plan, where it was the 540,000 was to be allocated, which was around half of the money that was identified for the on-property fixes. And this is around where it's multiple properties contributing to one issue that we can fix. So it was in Torini Street, we had a couple of examples of this, where by being able to do one fix, we're actually able to drain 5 properties at once in those things.
So that is to the chair, that could mean open drains in certain areas to alleviate that problem around Torini Street in particular, and around that whole catchment.
Through the chair, this is piping mainly into private property. So we've already got our reticulation out on the road, either open drains or pipe network. And this is trying to reduce the flooding on private property where we got affected by multiple properties. So there's more of a communal benefit, and that will reduce the floodwaters entering gully traps.
So the example I think most councillors have seen was in Owen Road, where we had a number of properties and it was about half a metre deep, all draining into one little gully trap, and it went across 6 properties. We put in a sump there into that property, into one property in particular. The rest of them still drain into it, but they drain into an adequately sized stormwater sump, which takes that water away. So that was the pictures of the kids on the slide going down into the lake that was forming in their backyard. So that lake's no longer there. So it's that kind of fix that we're looking to do in more places to get the stormwater out of the wastewater.
So this first session of work will be finished by June next year?
We've got $540,000 to spend this financial year, so we'll be looking to try and crack into a lot of these as soon as possible. Some we know about, and we've started the procurement of actually putting those in. Others we need to design for and plan for to make sure we have them right.
Very good.
So there's a lot of renewals, there's a lot of water main renewals. Clapcock Dam still needs more work done up there, and we've got our pipe bridge refurbishments happening on the Wainaki main water supply line as well. Our UV for Waipawa for the water treatment plant, that is starting, so the procurement's out for that, and that was another 500,000 for that was put into the long-term plan. So as you're aware, this was an important piece of kit to have put on for when we do fire up the Waipawa water supply plant, to make sure that that water was safe to drink. So we're looking at that now to get that done as soon as possible. So there's a huge amount of projects. I won't go through every single one of them. As you can see, they carry on for a long time. But this is the sort of detail that we need to have for our contractors to be able to talk to each of these so that they can understand, ask questions, and just talk about that timing with us as well. So this is very much us presenting all of the work we've got and then going from there. And then it clicks into roading, where we've done the exact same thing again, talked about when the design is, when the implementation is. That's, as I said previously, about our footpaths, the small projects that we're looking to do there. So that's the ones where we've got those supply panels to be able to help put in those small things, and making sure we get that work to market so that people can actually get in and be able to prioritise that work program as it comes through. For Councillor Burdett, this is the resurfacing and renewals, primarily for State Highway 35. Sorry, for Councillor Seymour. So we've got $10 million to spend this season that we're looking to get the resurfacing done for. So we're having meetings with Downer and suppliers about how they're going to make sure that that resurfacing and renewals are done. This financial year. So start of some of the resurfacing, the ordering is already underway to actually make sure we've got the chip seal and all of those things ready. The asphalt plant we're looking to bring here in January to do the big runs of asphalt that we need to. So we do have a very large program to happen on State Highways 35 and State Highway 2 this year. So the teams will be very busy. And it just, The other one is around, as Dave was saying, the emergency works contract. So we do have a lot of things that we're trying to bundle again through the emergency works, where it's simple things, trying to make sure that if they're going up to do one, say, retaining wall, that they do the other retaining walls that are within a kilometre as well, rather than tendering for each individual one. So we're trying to bundle this work up so we can get these things to happen faster and faster. It just keeps going and going. Yeah. So, but this is the level of detail that's needed for our contractors. This one is quite a big one for us, and it's a step change for us as an organisation and the way that we deliver our roading. So this is our aggregate supply. Currently, council, we rely on the likes of Downer and Fulton Hogan when we need materials to supply us, and we are also finding increasingly that we are in competition for supply of material, particularly for aggregate, with forestry. We've had instances already this year where the quarries aren't able to keep up with our projects that we have on, and also keep up with the forestry companies at the same time, because we're competing for the same resource. We also have instances where we have council quarries that are leased out to other suppliers. So forestry, the example I always use is Huanui Quarry up at Tauwhare Parae. Hikurangi Forest Farms has consent to take out of there. So we're trucking past our own council quarry because we can't get access to it because they're too busy crushing their own rock. They won't crush our rock at the same time, even though it's out of our quarry. What Dave and the team have done, and you will have seen it in the paper, is put out an expression of interest to actually crush our own material. So this would be mobile crushing plants that would crush from our quarries where we have them, but then also looking for our river run up in the north. So actually right up all the way the coast, identifying the Waipu, actually having a mobile crushing plant that we put on rotation and they crush to our spec, but then also stockpile to the amounts that we need as well. The beauty of this means that we don't need to wait for forestry orders to be filled before we get our supply, but it also means that we can run material all year round and have it sitting there ready for us when we need it in the winter as well, so we can stockpile out of season. So a lot of the suppliers who have said they're doing the expressions of interest are all bragging about how much money they think that they can save council, so they're talking the right thing. Let's see how it goes when it comes out, but there are a number of different suppliers that we can bring into different places, but it will also mean that we will look to open up quarries that we haven't previously used for a while, and also go into private quarries and extract out of those for rates that will be cheaper than what we can as well, because we'll start to strategically open quarries where we know we have demand for material. We've also been talking with, just a footnote there, with GHL about the quarry potential up on Tauwhare Parae as well. So they have some potential for us to take out of there as well.
Question, why is it really under control of the river? Given the footers are there, screwing, it's me.
Through the chair, part of why we want to bring the control back in is so that we aren't paying a markup on our own material to put onto our own roads. We're more than happy to pay for the cost of, you know, supplying the aggregates for actually the crushing and getting things ready. That's fine. The issue we have is that we don't have anybody contracted to run our material for us at the moment. So we are placing orders through Downer to supply our material for our roads. In effect, Downer should be just going and picking it up from our stockpiles that we have and putting them on our roads, rather than us paying somebody else to crush our material for somebody else to put on. So there's too many hands in the system at the moment. It's far better if they're picking up from where we control. And if we can control the supply of aggregate, then we can have a far better control over the roads, the quality, and where we are able to create stockpiles at the same time.
So, supplementary, Mr. Chairman, through you. That's the point I'm making. Filters have been there since Eastworks, which was a council CO, and currently it's the best rock and our prime source. So why do we continue to let that? I know it's a commercial operation.
The Fulton Hogan have the consents to take from the Waipu, Krakatu, Whiro, and a range of different river runs already. The Matar, Kurus have, Kimberleys do. There's a range of different people who already have consents. We will need to get our consents as well. but they have just been the suppliers who are able to have the market, and they've had market share because we've never gone in and done this. Well, we haven't since Ministry of Works days. So hence we're going back to us being able to control these things by going in and having the ones in control of the money and where it goes. In a similar vein to that, we've also had out an expression of interest for our professional services. So this is for the likes of Opus and GHD, who do a lot of our work for us in Four Waters, roading, a lot of Lifelines work. For example, GHD are actually a subcontractor to Downer, so they've been doing our resource consents through Downer. They've been doing our roading designs on behalf of Downer for us. What we want to do is actually, we own the engineering provision of services again, so we can actually start prioritising, we can hold the designs. The reason we want to hold the designs is, as you can imagine, if Downer do the design, and it's nothing on Downer, we have a good relationship with them, of course, but they also have the control, they've paid for the designs to be done. They also know the best things about actually getting the work done as well. If we own the designs, we can put them out to whoever we want to as well. So part of bringing that control back in is actually having a range of suppliers to be able to get our professional services done, but then also making sure that we can bring other companies into that professional services as well. Key thing for this is being locally based and making sure that they're going to have the right level of indemnity insurance to be able to keep up, but it means that we're able to pick from more than one supplier to help with our engineering expertise, but then also the increased buying power of not just roading, but then having the Four Waters as well. It's a significant spend, so if we're able to bundle that, then we should be getting an economy of scale from that as well, rather than getting different prices from firms depending on the jobs that go through. And we're just going to update them on the Provincial Growth Fund around the fact of the packaging up of the works that we do through that. Talk about the Northland model that we're investigating at the moment, and just some of the PGF projects that are there. So that is the purpose of this evening, and talking that through, and we'll be reporting back on how this work progresses and goes from there. Is there any questions?
Councillor Seymour. Mary.
Numbered. It says that this year's contract is approximately 4K. Is that lit now? No. I think this is the place to raise it. And I think Councillor Thompson is aware that we're going to be raising it. The auditors reported to council this morning, and one of the things that's outstanding in audit is that we've not been checking the Waipawa flood control scheme, and only 6.8% of the scheme's flood control stop bank length has been inspected during the current year, when in actual fact the standard was to be 25%. So this is referred to in the audit report that was provided to council at Finance and Audit this morning, and we just seem to be constantly pushing back on the Waipawa flood control scheme. Now, those of us who think about rainfall events in this town and in this region, and those of us who live through a few, know how quickly that can happen and how extensive the damage can be. And it does really bother me that we still haven't let a tender for this. And about 3 years ago, we were pretty much there and ready to let a tender for some work on it. Then we did have some redesign work go on. But can someone please update me, Mr. Wilson, if you won't mind? What can we expect to see? Now, we've got some coloured timeframes across the bottom of this, but I really suggest this is one of our most critical projects and our Drainwise project, and we're not making progress on it.
Through the chair, so there was the audit committee was regarding maintenance inspections. That's an annual maintenance inspection program. Up until this year, we've just run off a paper program of inspecting 25% of the stock banks. This year we brought that into our asset management system, and there was a glitch on that, which is why we've only inspected 6% out of the 25%. We're correcting that within the IPS8 asset database. So next year even this year we'll fully inspect 25% of the stock banks to meet that audit requirement. For the Waipawa stock bank, the hearing is closed. We're probably 5 days into the 15-day period where we await the decision from the commissioner. So we expect that by the end of the week after next. And then there's a 15-day appeal process for that. There has been delays. That's been about the updating the modelling and having more certainty within the modelling, which then dictates the design levels. But I think we've just gone out last night for the tender for this first stretch, subsequent to having the resource consent come through and been approved, and no appeals.
It's quite hard to hear you on that thing. Half of it goes intermittently. So you're saying you've got one tender?
We've gone out for tender, so we've lodged the tender document onto TenderLink last night. So we're waiting. So we're waiting. Yeah, it will be a 4 or 5 week tender period. But we're also waiting for the actual notification from the commissioner about whether we've actually got resource consent, which means we can actually construct. So there is a potential risk if we get whatever decision we get from the commissioner, that it might go down to an appeal process, which then goes into the Environment Court, which then could be another 6 to 9 months process, which would then mean that we wouldn't be able to construct this season. But I'm hopeful that we won't go through that appeal process, because the number of submitters was quite low, and it would be at their cost if it goes to the Environment Court. So I think we've done enough not to end up in that situation, but yeah, we can't guarantee that.
So you're calling tenders, supplementary procurement, we're calling tenders, and I appreciate entirely that takes 4 or 5 weeks, and then it takes an evaluation period. Are you anticipating, subject to a satisfactory consent, obviously, that construction would happen in the autumn?
We'll be starting probably maybe late this year, but early next year.
Great.
For the first stretch.
On a 4K, did I see? A 4K section?
Yes,
and
that's
are
correct.
we then simultaneously preparing for the next section?
Yep, so as we start doing the construction for this season, we'll be starting the tender documents of the process for subsequent season, and that links in with the PGF, which is kind of floating around in the background. And we're looking at how to do the procurement, so whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 5 year type contract to get the best rates and best bang for the buck.
And supplementary, one last question. Was the consent only for that 4K piece of work, or was it for the whole duration?
Consent was for the whole 64 Ks of Stockbank, and including the cycle trail as well.
Not for the whole riverbank?
Yes. So it doesn't mean we have to build cycle trails on all the cycle.
And I'm not worrying about that build. But was it just for the 4K
No.
that you proposed to get all 4 of
For the whole scheme.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were preparing to put a claim into the Provincial Growth Fund. Has that occurred yet, or is that underway? Or?
End of this week, we should be lodging that.
So through the chair, we have been working with other regional councils around how we can use the provincial growth funding to help with these types of schemes. So there are a range of councils that are looking to seek funding from the PGF. So we have no surety. We're just trying to work through the process with MB and the PGF staff around what it is that we're going to be putting in for. We think we have a very strong case to put in for provincial growth funding. We're just going to have to wait and see, because it doesn't quite align with their criteria, how they're going to amend the criteria in order for us to have something. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
Have you, supplementary, have you been working at all with Activate Tairāwhiti with this because I know that I've spoken to Steve, and he believes it's, as you do, that it's a very strong case and would like to.
Yes, we have been working with Activate Tairāwhiti. So we've been working with the CEO of Taranaki Regional Council, Basil Chamberlain, and a number of other parties and regional councils regarding 5 flood control schemes putting forward a proposal for PGF funding. And this is after discussions with Shane Jones and the CEO of Taranaki. So there's been a lot of work behind the background to put these 5 schemes forward for the PGF.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Right. Done and dusted. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So I think I'll just is that for noting, is it? Move, okay.
And this is lots of little Ds along one and an east and a street. Could you just tell me that? Does that just mean it's still in design? What, for 9 months?
That's right, because some of the road is actually not road to, it's up to it, so we've got to go through the process of change.
So, Mr. Chairman, I mean, this is really valuable information, but we would be naive if we thought it was going to happen just like it's going to happen now. So, that would be the slide. So it would be really cool, because it is good information, if we could perhaps have it back modified, so that we've actually got something that is accountable, we can hold it to account and understand how it happened, because
There's
there
no
will
hidden.
be some steps in the process, I suspect, and if you could bring it up to speed, say in a month's time or after the meeting.
So through the chair, the purpose of this is to help feed into that November reporting that you're going to start getting around, so not November, but the quarterly reporting that you'll get will start having these projects laid out. So with the timeframes, the budgets, as the chair has said, around what's split over what financial year and what's the milestones they're going to be achieved. So you'll get far more transparency across this level of projects, so you'll be able to see how they work. If there are projects that you want to drill in down further, like DrainWise, so DrainWise will be there and will say, I don't know, 30 properties will be done, whatever it is. We'll be able to bring you reports around which 30 properties, when the time frame is for each of those individuals. So it'll roll up the reporting, so you'll start to see, rather than the $10 million capital works program, you'll be able to see this kind of level of detail and where those green and oranges, where the design is, when the thing is, will be set, so that when we come back, if there's any changes, the committee will be able to say, hold on, you said you would be in construction, why are you not? How are those funds? So you can track it against our spend for year to date and those things as well. So it'll give you far more visibility across our work program by the way we're going to bring this back to you.
I'd like to just add to that. We've been working on this for a while and we've been in conversation, and it's important. It's part of what crossing over from audit even we've been talking about, and we, we'll have the milestones not only of the job, but we'll have where the cost factors are breaking the cost factors as well, so that we can go back and say, well, how come you're halfway through the job and you're halfway finished, which is bang on. You are, or else you might say, how come you're 3/4 of the way through the job, but you've nearly spent the 100% spent. So we will be able to, as governors, monitor that job and have accountability to the providers of the program. So and this is a start of where this is leading up to. In November we have another report coming in, and so it's important because up till now we get to a point where we might have spent the amount for the library, and the library's 3/4 finished or something like that, and we just lost the governance, lost a handle on it. We just didn't get so. This is going to be new to what we've done before, and it's something we've been working on for a while. Councillor Foster.
Just my general question, just with the recent oil price increase, is that going to be reflective on our bitumen costs? Was it coming through as yet? It will come through. It will come through. So that means that we won't be getting bang for the buck that we have budgeted for. It'll be.
You're right, and until we, it'll be reflected in the price. So as soon as we can do that.
Through the chair, we are looking to offset where we can this construction season though. So we are looking at establishment costs, as we were saying about the procurement methods of having 3 or 4 jobs tendered at once rather than one at a time, but then also making sure that we're bulk buying as we go through. So asphalt's the one I always use, but we only want to make sure we have one plant come to town because the establishment costs are significant. Rather than bringing multiple plants, we bring one plant to town and we run it for a longer period of time rather than stopping. So we're bundling up as many square metres of asphalt as we can when it comes for that period, so that we get that economy of scale by doing as many metres as we can, because the establishment costs are still significant. They happen anyway. So while it's here, we want to make sure it's running as fast as we can.
Okay, so that was moved by Councillor Stolt and seconded by Councillor Burdett. Any last questions? All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone.